think you should come in your early. It's too good for that. Yeah, or 4 foot down. You can 4 foot down. Well, I think if you're not afraid of it.
Well, they were Mormons, they're not now. They were Mormons, they're not now.
Well, I think now we have to wait for people to start talking to us. Yeah.
Where do you go?
That's what you should. Yes, we're doing Act 1, and you're trying to make you tell me, you know. Keep it on with song.
Will now resume. It's January 18, 2024, regular board meeting. If everyone. Everyone, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Just for everyone's information, board member Phil Pritzker is attending the meeting remotely due to an illness, as is allowed by Section 7 of the Open Meetings Act. Jessica, will you please take attendance of the student representatives?
Brandon?
Here.
Mario?
Here.
Aaliyah?
Here.
Welcome.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Any individual physically present at the meeting who wishes to address the board for public comments must complete a comment card and give it to Ms. Del Real. Anyone virtually attending who wishes to address the board must complete the public comment form linked to the agenda prior to us starting that section, and written comments may also be submitted via email, which will be shared with the board. Tonight, I'm looking in the audience and I see Sherry Klump from the Park District. Welcome and Happy New Year. Let's see. Okay. And next up is the board communication. I'll start with NSSEO. We had our meeting last week before it got really cold. We mostly went over several of the upcoming events that they are having. They're doing a blood drive. Their Winter Wonderland is Saturday, February 10th. If anyone is interested in going, it is for parents, grandparents, grandchildren, anyone who would like to go. It is out at Sunrise Lake, which is a fantastic facility. I do have that information. If anyone is interested, just let me know. Today they had their staff wellness event, but the big thing that I had put in everybody's spot is their foundation's bingo night. It is their foundation's biggest fundraiser. Everyone is welcome. However, you must be 21 to attend. It is held in a alcoholic facility. It's in Arlington Heights. It's a ton of fun. They have raffles, silent auction, a couple of bingo games, which are a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun. We have a lot of our teachers and staff that show up. Several of our board members have gone. I actually won last year. So if anyone is available and would like to come, that's a lot of fun. So next on our agenda is the EdRed update. Bill.
Thank you, Debbie. You are right, by the way, it is a lot of fun at the bingo night. A few things from EdRed. The subcommittees have begun meeting. I'm participating on the School Safety Subcommittee, the Transportation Committee, and my favorite, the TIF/Bears Committee. A few very brief highlights from the initial meetings of each. On school safety, we expect a polling place bill to be introduced in the next few weeks. They are currently waiting on a review of the draft language of the bill. Once the bill is introduced, we expect some pushback from, quote, the election folks, primarily county clerks. There will be a call for direct advocacy by the committee members and anyone else who might be interested in advocating to their legislators. If you're interested, let me know. I'll make sure you get notified of that. As to school safety, there was some additional discussion as to what the legislature may decide to mandate going forward, and as usual, mandate without funds for it. The Transportation Committee was discussing EV buses and school bus licensing issues. The TIF/Bears Committee will be working on additional reform language, not that we haven't tried before. We, District 21 and other school districts, will be asked to pass resolutions in support of responsible TIF reform. Mike, I mentioned that to you before. If you haven't seen the draft proposal for Bridget, either one of us could get you a copy. There are currently no new Bears pilot proposals before the legislature at this moment, but obviously that can change very quickly, especially if they happen to reach an agreement with their underlying taxing bodies. Finally, the EdRed annual legislative dinner will be held on Monday, January 29th. If you haven't already signed up, contact Leticia. And the next EdRed member meeting will be held here on Friday, February 9th at 1:30. And that's, oh, Jessica, did you have anything to add? I know you're on some of the committees.
Yes, if I may, you've covered transportation. I'm also serving on the full-day kindergarten subcommittee. We also had our first initial Zoom. Now that the bill has passed to require full-day kindergarten, we talked mostly about the logistics of implementation and obstacles that some districts are facing whose initial referendums failed. How full-day kindergarten will interface with the governor's early childhood initiatives. All of this is, how will this? And the state task force for full-day kindergarten apparently had their first meeting just the other day. We were allowed to listen in. Unfortunately, I was unable to due to a conflict, but hopefully I'll have some notes from that soon, and maybe that will give us a little more direction as to, what the task force wants to do for their missive.
Okay, thank you. IASB updates, Bill?
Thank you. The North Cook Spring Division meeting, kind of funny they're calling it spring since it's going to be on February 28th, will be held on Wednesday, February 28th in Skokie's District 73.5 Elizabeth Myers School. Dr. Erica Hunt, Project Director at ROE 17, and Tom Withy, Senior Researcher at Goshen Consulting, will present on understanding and addressing the educator shortage in Illinois and in our region. If you would like to attend and haven't yet registered, again, please contact Leticia. Next month, I will be meeting with IASB's new Executive Director, Kimberly Small, and with IASB's new Associate Executive Director for Governmental Relations. That's got to be held to put on a business card. Sarah Miller, to discuss on improving IASB's advocacy efforts. If any of you have any thoughts on the matter, please contact me in the next couple weeks so that I could share them. And that would be it. Thank you. Okay. And I apologize for that little slip.
Okay, next is North Cook. Arlen?
Good evening. We had our North Cook meeting yesterday, actually, at 7:30 in the morning, and lots of things going on, and I wanted to just highlight for you. You've got some materials that I've handed out. You've got our director's update, which gives you a lot of data about things that we're doing, but you also have a sheet that I gave you today, which highlights the growth in two of the programs in particular, the ALOP, the Alternative Learning Program, and the Student Advocacy Program, and as well the Truancy Program. The demand for our assistance, for North Cook assistance, is tremendous. And I wanted to highlight, since not many people really know what North Cook does, just highlight a couple of things. 39 school districts feed into North Cook. The list of programs include things like leadership coaching, alternative programs for students, McKinney-Vento Services, Health and Life Safety, Education Licensure, Transportation, Bus Training, a host of things. And what's happened is, when I got on the board, which is probably 20 years ago, 18, 19 years ago, we were struggling with under $1 million because you may recall the state had cut all of the divisions across the state, and that was because of a scandal. Well, what the state realized over time was the regional offices of schools are very vital to working with school districts. It's much easier and better than working it from Springfield. And so as a result, our budget now has gone from a time when literally we were counting pennies to keep it afloat. In the days that I got on the board, we've gone from $1 million in a budget to $4 million in budget. And it's allowed us to do all the new things, Mike, that we're doing now in support of school districts. And the most recent growth in personnel in the assistance program for kids, which is, I think, a brilliant program from what I can tell. And it mirrors what some organizations in Chicago have done to help kids move out of gangs into education. But this is just to support kids with someone they can talk to. And it seems to be working. Our staff has gone from 21 to over 80 people in this period of time. So it's an exciting time to be part of North Cook. And that's all I have for you. But you got a little reading. If you'd read it, it'll bring you up to date on everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 708 Board. Harlan, was there any updates there?
That's a horse of another color. I'm really saddened to report that it's very clear now to most of us who are involved in this, including board members on the 708 Board, that Wheeling Township just will do anything to terminate this program, to prevent additional health care, mental health care from arriving in our community. And the most recent is that even though the state validated the referendum and told them that they would not allow them to put another referendum on the ballot in 2024, they've now announced that they'll put a referendum on the ballot in 2025. And again, it's just another effort to try to kill off the 708 Mental Health Board. It's despicable. It's sad for our community because it means the resources that we could get locally, $1.5 million of additional funding for mental health, disabilities, and those with substance abuse issues is not going to happen anytime soon. We have a meeting. I've met with both Ann Gillespie and Dan Didich, talked to Mark Walker, Mary Beth Canty, all of the local legislators who are supporting us. And I'm not sure that there's a legislative fix that will help us. So we're going to have to go back to the drawing boards on it. And I'm sorry to report that. It's really sad for those in our community desperately in need of additional care.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Stacy, did you?
Oh, I might add one thing. Statewide, there were 7 referendums that were subject to this legislative issue. That is the language of the referendum. 6 of the 7 have gone ahead and levied for the next year. The only one that is not levied is Wheeling Township.
Yes, thank you. Stacy, anything? No updates?
No, I have a Village of Wheeling update,
Okay.
if this is a good time for that. So I had the opportunity to attend the Village of Wheeling board meeting on Monday night where our fire chief retired. So I think we are on the search for a new fire chief. But he was honored at the reception. And as I think everybody knows, Wheeling enacted an ordinance to address the crisis, I think the regional crisis of migrants being bused from Texas into the state of Illinois. I had a robust conversation with Village Attorney Jim Ferrillo prior to the meeting as a private citizen of Wheeling with some questions regarding the ordinance. He was actually very kind and answered all of my questions and concerns, and then actually addressed my questions and concerns in the open meeting as well. I give them a lot of credit. I think they're working on a plan, hopefully reaching out to their neighbors around other taxing bodies to put a plan together. Should we have a busload of folks dropped off at 4 o'clock on a Friday anywhere in this area like they've experienced up in McHenry County or even in Rockford. But Mr. Rufato asked that they reach out to the churches. But I think what was most important and most impressed on Mr. Ruffalo was this is targeting the bus companies. This has nothing to do with the nice people on the buses. And if people arrive in our community and they need our help, then helping them will be at the forefront, and dealing with the buses and the bus companies will be a whole separate matter. But Mr. Ferrello did want to make sure that he addressed that everyone should feel safe. I introduced them to the new welcoming center that we have down by Prospect Heights, passed along that information. And I want to thank them for being open and transparent in what they were doing, addressing why it needed to be done, answering all of my questions, and assuring that safety is the most important thing.
Deb, if I can just add, Arlington last night also passed an ordinance to deal with this situation. It was a combination of compassion for those coming in and how to keep them safe and avoid the kinds of drop-offs that have happened in other communities at off hours, and how to penalize the bus companies. And I thought the board did a nice job trying to marry the issues of the community with the issues of the individuals coming in flip-flops and trying to survive in a very cold environment. So yeah, that happened in Arlington last night as well.
Awesome, thank you. I'll go around the table for any other governmental updates. Bill, nothing? Nothing else. Dagmara, do you have anything? Jess?
If you will indulge me for a moment, I would like to introduce Flat Turkey, who is attending tonight's board meeting with us. My youngest is a fifth grader at Tarkington. This is our last year there, so we wanted to make it super special and make sure that we participated in this. So Tarkey is going around with some of our family members to showcase the jobs and interactions that we have with our community. He went to work with Dad last week in a really cool plastics lab. This is not nearly as cool, but this is what Mom does. So hopefully we can get a picture at some point, but I wanted to get him on the record. And yes, I colored this. I would like all of the praise for my coloring skills. I have come a long way in my years as a parent, but
Hold it up, Jessica.
this is not going to be the official picture.
But it will be Arlen's official Facebook.
It will be
Post it.
Arlen's official. So welcome, everyone. This is Tarkey.
Welcome, Turkey.
If I can add, I took Flat Charlie with me to London on a trip for my kid. You can only imagine the expression on the Brits' faces when I pulled him out of a meeting and sat him up next to me. It's great.
Yes, many of my husband's coworkers were wondering what he was doing, posing this little thing in the lab, but you know, they went with it.
In my day, Flat Turkey went to Disney World with us
That's way cool.
on the train.
I remember.
So he had a lot of fun. Yes, he is. Is Phil around?
He's on.
Phil, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, two quick things. One is that for EdRed, I'm also serving on the communications committee. And for the upcoming legislative dinner on the 29th at Stevenson High School, there's going to be a communication and sort of an unveiling of a few things that in the branding area that EdRed is working on. So I think that should be kind of exciting. Looking forward to it. The other thing, just as an add-on to what Arlen was saying about the tragedy of the Wheeling Township Board and your indication that there's no legislative fix at this point, I would add simply that there is a voter fix. The voters voted to have the referendum and approve it, and they can take the next step. If the current personnel is not willing to follow the lead, then the voters need to get back into action. So that's it.
Bill's quite correct about that.
Okay, next we have a report from our student representatives. Dr. Conley.
Once again, we are very happy to have our student representatives, and they're going to take it away. You guys got your reports. Go ahead. Who's going first?
I just want to add that this isn't updated because I worked on it yesterday. I wasn't able to get to it before the due date.
Oh, that's no problem. Yeah, you're good, Mario.
Right. So at least what I remember writing is that during the survey, most of the questions were talking not about specific classes, but the student schedule and whether the students agree on it or not. So
Back up a little bit, Mario. Talk about if one of you three talk about what the survey is. What this is coming out of the conversation that you guys had with Mr. Lapatino at the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, right?
Yeah.
So just tell the board a little bit more about what that survey is.
So it's pretty much just a survey that's going to be handed out to all the students in the district or the middle schools.
Middle school.
Middle schools, yes. Sorry. And it's pretty much just questions about whether they like their schedules. Like, for example, if they like the class, the period, how long they are, or if they should be extended to a longer period of time. And then also it's the variety of their classes. I don't exactly remember, but yeah.
That's good. Thanks.
That's okay. So yeah, basically, trying to piggyback off what Mario said. They're trying to send. So basically, we had a certain amount of students from the three middle schools, London, Cooper, and Holmes, gathered together here, and we discussed topics about something we can do, changes we can make to the middle schools. Topic that came up was the scheduling throughout the middle schools. Scheduling, from what I hear, is very, very complicated because, yeah. Sixth grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade all have different, very, very different schedules, but it all has to go together to fit in with the exploratory classes. So as an example, 6th grade has their home base, and home base is around 40 minutes, but they have their home base split it into two parts at London. They have it at the beginning of the day for 20 minutes and at the end of the day for 20 minutes. 7th grade, I'm not sure about 7th grade, but it's also 40, all home base is 40 minutes. So for the 40 minutes, they have it, I believe, at the end of the day. Okay. And then 8th grade, we have ours in the beginning of the day. So knowing from that, and then they have their core classes, so it's all a big jumble around. But the thing it tries to get all in together is the exploratory classes. An example can be of length of the exploratory classes. So it's very complicated, but if we're gonna make changes to the schedule through the survey, I believe it would try to ask if the classes exploratory classes should be longer, shorter, or how it is. It's 45 minutes, I believe. But there's also pros and cons with different time changes to the exploratory classes. So some pros for the longer classes can be, it allows teachers to have more time to explain what they're trying to do. So an example, music, I believe in 7th grade and 8th grade, you can teach guitar, and in 6th grade, I believe they do simple piano. And it also allows the students to have more time to interact and understand more. But at the same time, with the cons, it can feel overwhelming, and it can sometimes feel dragging for the students who might not like the classes. But then if the exploratory classes are too long, it would have to shorten the core classes throughout the day. But if we were to make it shorter, it would give more class time. It would exploratory classes would have shortened time, so it might feel rushed and more packed with information. So it might lead to more homework, and it makes a lot. It's a big variable. But for if we have it as currents, it depends mainly on the teachers what they believe as well. If they like it how it is or how they shorten longer, it all depends on what they're teaching as well.
I just have a question. When are the surveys gonna come out, or is it not gonna happen this year?
I know we're working on putting that together. Dr. Childress, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the first part is just gathering information from students and staff. So there's a staff committee as well that's working with Mr. Libatino and Carolyn Droll on looking at different things. But we really wanted to have a student voice in what were some of the pieces that you all were interested in. I think that we may see, based on student voice, some changes possibly with exploratory options. Some of the other scheduling things are more complicated than we would be able to do so fast to turn around for next school year. But definitely, I think we're looking at it as to what are some changes we could make for next school year to improve things, and then maybe some other changes for like the following year. It all depends on a lot of different factors. As one of you said, it's quite complicated.
But the survey itself is going out sometime pretty soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
we wanted the student advisory, Dr. Conley's student advisory first to give some feedback on what questions to ask the broader student body. Sorry.
Right, yeah, so that was one of the highlights of that meeting, is the fact that the kids were really helping Mr. Lapatino form the survey. So you'll definitely be seeing it and can kind of lead your peers through it pretty soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
To the meeting that we got to talk about this, I wasn't able to make it, but based off what I've been told by my other peers and what I've heard here from Mario and Brandon, it lines up pretty much with what they said about it was mainly focusing on the schedule and the structure of the schedule more than just on the classes themselves, and the lengths of classes and the pros and cons and what could work better with longer class can't work for all the classes sometimes, and it's just trying to find that perfect length.
One of the other things that I really enjoyed at the advisory council is that we did a stump the superintendent round. So the kids that were assembled really kind of had carte blanche to ask me whatever question. Why do we do this way? Or why do we have to do this, or whatever the case may be. So I think we covered topics of why is the school day the length that it is? Can we do a 4-day school week as opposed to a 5-day school week? Guys, remember? I know, Aaliyah, you were out that day, but do you guys remember some of the other questions that they threw at me?
I also remember that they mentioned recess, during lunch break.
Oh, that's right, middle school recess. Yes. So we had a conversation about why that might not be the best idea. Having been a middle school assistant principal and principal. It was a good conversation. I don't know. Do you think I got stumped with anything? Yeah. Well, in all fairness, I didn't tell them that we were doing it until we did it, so they didn't have a full chance to kind of put together their questions. But
now they know.
But now they know. Yeah.
So, Deb, can I just a comment, because they're part of our board. So I have to say, I've watched the three of you grow in the time you've been here, and the determination to ask a question, the courage to ask a question in a classroom, let alone at a board meeting, let alone at a meeting of your peers, takes a lot. And I'm really proud of the three of you, how you've dived into this. And you're really talking as though you've been on this board for a couple of years. So Keep it up. It's great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we will be moving on to staff communication. Several items on the agenda. The first is Donna Ray Steckling Educators Grant.
Yeah, we're happy to be able to bring several presentations to you this evening, but we're going to start off with some celebrations and some recognitions, and so I'm going to turn it over to Cassian.
Thank you. I'm happy to recognize the Steckling family and who generously created this teacher's grant called the Donna Ray Steckling Grant, led by Donna Ray's children. If you can stand, Linda Collins, Bill Steckling, and Janet Reed. This grant honors their mother and grandmother, and Andy Steckling, our own communications specialist, is the grandson of Donna Ray Steckling. Donna Ray had a long career in District 21. I should push these through. She was a library assistant at London, and she was also the secretary in the curriculum department at the admin center. She passed away a couple years back in 2020, and this grant was established to foster learning and invigorate a new generation of educators. The teachers who are awarded this grant are in their first 3 years of their career, and they fill out an application, and the requests are given up to $1,000 a year for the total amount of $3,000 a year. So we just wanted to thank the Steckling family. I want to show you the recipients now. There were several teachers within their first to third years. Some got $200, some got up to $800, and you can see what the grants were used for. And I want to bring up one of the teachers, Kelly Lawrence from Hawthorne, who is using her grant money for a garden for the pre-K students.
I just wanted to thank you for your generosity. Our preschool garden has resurrected after COVID. Last year we got back up and functional. We were in and great appreciate your generosity and keep it going. So we just wanted to provide you with some pictures of what we've done so far and how we will continue to keep it going.
Would you like to come up and say a few words, Linda? Or? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I also have a handwritten thank you note.
Again, on behalf of the entire district, we just want to thank you for the support of our newest faculty and staff. And, you know, anytime you're just starting in the profession, you know, you're with you know, not a lot of materials, and, you know, you accumulate things over the years. So to really be able to give some of our least veteran and also just starting out staff, you know, the opportunity to gain some to help their students is really just, we greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Student and Family Support Services presentation, community partners.
Yes, so normally Kim Klein, our Assistant Superintendent for Support Services, would be giving this presentation, but she was not able to join us this evening due to a family event. So I'm pinch hitting for her, as well as Dave DeMuth, who's our principal over at Cooper, and Sammy Roth, who's our principal over at Whitman. They're going to kind of finish up this part of the presentation. But, you know, one of the things that we have done a lot of work on over the past well, really over the past 5 years, but over the past 3 years in particular, is to really be building those community-based partnerships that are providing wraparound services for our students and their families. I don't know where the clicker is, if you guys which one, okay, there we go. So, when we talk about wraparound services in schools, what we're looking to do is to design those services that really give the support that a child is needed, that a child needs throughout the day and when they're not in school, and to support families, to really try and make sure that all of our students that are coming to the table with different needs, with different experiences, really have the opportunity to excel and really learn in a healthy space. So, one of the things that I think we've been really, really blessed by is through the work of Kim and her staff, and really the district, the buildings, has been to be able to develop some very strong partnerships, particularly with Omni Family Services, with the YWCA for some of our early childhood, and growing some newer organizations coming online as we continue to expand out. So again, just a kind of a quick timeline. We really kind of formally began our partnership with Omni Youth Services in the fall of 2019. And that has grown to where we now have Omni counselors that are meeting with students in our schools, as well as Omni counselors that are meeting with students and families on the first floor of this building outside of the school day. We also have really tried to pursue grants. We obviously, a major grant was the Community Partnership Grant, which really has for the past 3 years, it was a significant grant, about $300,000 in total, or a year? 600,000 total, yeah, over 3 years. Unfortunately, that we're in the third year. So we don't know if there's going to be another round of community partnerships grants. I mean, I think we're all praying that there will be, and that we will pursue that and be successful in securing an additional. But that brought critical financial resources to be able to do some of these things. So we also have pursued expanded funding in early childhood, in particular the GER grant, which gave us some additional funds to be able to work with parents as teachers, really kind of that parent education, right at the youngest level, again with the YWCA kind of facilitating a lot of that. One of the things that I think that as I noted is that these partnerships are expanding. So as we find additional resources, we really do try to engage and bring those services to bear. So for instance, Cutting Edge Counseling Solutions is an additional group that we are starting to work with to try and provide more counseling services for students, because everybody has capacity issues, right? I mean, Omni can only handle, they don't just work with us, so they can only handle so much. So to really try and there is no lack of need. So to really try and make sure that we are able to continue doing that. Progressive Psychological Healthcare is a new partnership that is coming online. And then, of course, with the school-based health center that will be opening up later in the spring, Advocate, there will be a behavioral health component to the work that they will be able to do. And so, we really, I think, have done a great job in marshaling, resources wherever we can. And it's really about removing barriers, right? So when we talk about equity, one of the major pieces of equity is removing barriers. So we can, so everybody has the opportunity to learn and grow and advance. And when you're dealing with trauma, or you're dealing with mental health issues, or you're just life in general, we all know that it can be rough. To be able to get access to those services kind of where you live, right? And our students spend a lot of time with us, I think is a critical component to this, and something that we're very proud of being able to do and intend to keep doing. We'll figure out the finances as we go along, but it's something that we're really hopeful that we'll continue to get some good help on that front. So again, just kind of to drill in a little bit more, with Omni Youth Services, they are currently in 9 of our schools. They're serving, as of December 1st, they have served 82 students, and then 8 students and families who have had family level counseling, again, downstairs on the first floor. And then cutting edge counseling, they are in 3 of our schools, and as of December 1st have been able to work with 32 students. So that's really significant, particularly when you're talking about, mental health services for youth. That is not an easy, bill to fit. Obviously, one of the emerging pieces is the increased need for Ukrainian or Russian-speaking counseling services. So that's always something that we are continuing to try and identify partnerships around that. Because clearly, we have a lot of our newcomers that, particularly from Ukraine, that they're coming from a war zone. They've seen some stuff, and so we really want to try and be as supportive of them as they make their transition into an American school system as well. So what I want to do is turn the presentation over to Sammy Roth, our principal at Whitman, who's going to just kind of give a little bit of flavor of some of the work that has been being done over there. Sammy, take it away.
Yeah, hi. So thank you for having me. I remember my first day in this district very, very clearly. It was July in 2019, and part of what really blew me away about District 21 and why I'm so happy and proud to still be here is standing in that first day with other principals and assistant principals, and there was such a strong emphasis on the whole child, and you just don't see that everywhere. You've been hearing it throughout this board meeting, how important our mental health is in addition to our academic achievements. So this Omni partnership has been incredibly valuable. I wanted to shed some light on it. The way that I thought I'd explain it is through some of the different groups that Omni Youth Services has really given some excellent support to. So the first one is one of our unique ones that I'm sure you all remember very clearly. Last year in October, we had 18 new students that all came off a bus from Texas, from Venezuela, from many, I think all originally from Venezuela, but from many countries. Some of these children had been traveling. They left Venezuela maybe a year prior. Some of them had left 5 to 6 years prior and had been through many different countries. And right off the bat, some of these kids were opening up about some real harsh things and emotionally overwhelming experiences and things that they had witnessed throughout this journey. And I know we all know this isn't unique to this one bus that came here. We have constantly newcomers all over the district from all over the world. What was unique about this one was just that it was so many from one place at one time. But we were able to get nearly all of our 18 newcomers in small groups or even one-on-one sessions with an Omni therapist. We had 2 last year and 2 this year, 1 Spanish speaking and 1 English speaking, which has been so important for our students to be able to get the services they need in the language that they're the most comfortable in. And it was pretty amazing, as you can imagine, with some of these stories, which I'm only touching the surface on, and they're not my stories, but traveling as a child for 6 years, just trying to find the right home, definitely interrupts your schooling. So we had some kids very high achieving. We also had some kids who did not know how to write their name in 3rd grade. And I attribute the success that every one of these students had, because every one of them grew, and they grew a significant amount, in part to the unbelievable staff at Whitman, because I'm sure you've all been around our building, you know how committed, like all of our District 21 staff, but I do have a special place for our Whitman friends. But it's also because of this Omni Youth support. We were able to give students a safe place, somebody to really open up with and talk to, that allowed them to then return to class and potentially start to close some of these gaps and fill some of these holes of education that they may have missed. So that's just one example, and that continues. We actually only have one student from that group that still attends Whitman. We have a couple other students still in the district, and many have moved elsewhere, but we have newcomers all the time, just like all the other schools in our district. And then the other group of students that I would highlight would be students that have tension at home, which unfortunately, right, that's just life. Everyone in this room has faced tragedy, has faced something completely unexpected. And if you take a second, and I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but if you take a second and think about how incredibly difficult that was for you to cope with and for you to face every day with, well, we're a grown adult. These are kids with developing brains. And so we have, some kids who it's divorce, it's separation, it's the death of a family member. It might even be witnessing some domestic violence where the Omni Youth support has been just invaluable in terms of giving these kids space. And, our social worker is wonderful too, but just like you were saying, Dr. Connolly, she's one person. And so this additional support has just been, I can't say enough about it. And I'll pass it to Dave DeMuth for Cooper's perspective.
Thank you for having me here tonight. I really appreciate it. Sammy took kind of like the group's kind of mentality. I focused on one particular student. That student has made tremendous growth. Their sixth grade year. I didn't know if we were going to make it the entire 3 years at Cooper. Her behavior was really precluding her from getting to the academic pieces of what we do on a daily basis. I did some digging through her data from last year, from 2 years ago, excuse me, as a sixth grader, and she missed 32% of like on a week of class time because of peer conflict, a lot of peer conflict, and a lot of just major mental health concerns. And parents were kind of we were fighting an uphill battle with parents as well. So it took a lot of time to build trust with these parents, to give us the opportunity to get this child into a group with a therapist on a weekly basis. And finally, at the end of sixth grade, we finally built enough trust with that family, and they signed the consent to go ahead and do so. And for her entire seventh grade year, she met with our Omni counselor on 4 times a month, so every week, a weekly basis. And the growth in this child now, from when she was in sixth grade, I joke with her mom, because I have a very good relationship with her mom, about I didn't know if we were going to make it through sixth grade, like I said earlier, and she's like, I didn't know either. But in eighth grade, you would not know who this child came from, where she was in sixth grade, because she is, I would say, kind of what we call a model student. She's in class regular. She's a leader in her classroom. She's ready to learn and hitting her goals every day and making enormous progress through all of the learning that she has done, both on the social emotional side and on the academic side. It's been a monumental task for our Omni counselor to get this child to where she is today, but I've been fortunate to have a very consistent Omni counselor for 3 years, which has been very great, and she's amazing. And the growth that this child has made has been, I don't think we would be here today with this child if we didn't have those Omni services 3 years ago, but 2 years ago for her. Another thing I want to highlight that's not up here is the Progressive Psychological Association counseling group that we're working with. It's starting next week. I had my staff call 10 Russian Ukrainian speaking families today. All of them said, heck yes, we want this. So I'm super happy to have that on board. Kim's been working for 2 years on this, and I'm super happy to have them, because I met with them on last Thursday, to have them partnering with us and helping and serving those kids that are coming over from Ukraine and even from Russia that have come from that war-torn country, as Dr. Connolly said. So super happy that all of these wraparound services are happening for our students, and it's super crucial and super important for what we do on a daily basis to get these kids ready to learn and to move on to high school. So thank you guys for all your support with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just, again, want to thank the board for its support of really having that whole child approach and really kind of looking out of the box and understanding and living the fact that, we can't do it alone. And yet, we are a major piece of the fabric that many of our students, travel through. I'm mixing metaphors here a little bit, but that's okay. And obviously, as we continue to build these partnerships and really try and find these additional resources, we hope that the value that is being seen translates into additional opportunities for funding at the federal level, at the state level, and we're keeping a very, very watchful eye on all of those, because we just know that the need is not going away, and it's something that we were really we're seeing great dividends from the work that we're doing here. So that was just kind of a brief overview that we wanted to provide this evening. So any questions?
No, I think the only question I would have, and I'm sure you do know this, and it's something to talk about later, is what's the hard need that we can't quite reach yet, as great a job as we're doing with what we have?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. I will say, however, that as the clinic comes online, that's going to be huge, because of there's a behavioral health component. One of the major challenges is for is to find child and adolescent psychiatric care.
Of course.
I mean, counselors are worth their weight in gold, but the bottom line is that there are medical professionals that also need to be part of these services. And so to have that scarcity of availability of psychiatric resources and so on and so forth, but then to have that ability in our work with Advocate and that's not to say that they're going to immediately be able to match with a child psychiatrist, but it's a pipeline in that many don't have. Right. And I know Stacy can attest to this, having worked in behavioral health. If the beds aren't there, that
and that age group, there's actually it doesn't matter if you have insurance, it doesn't matter if you have Medicaid. In the child lane, there's not a lot. Kim is actually connected with, I think, one of the best child providers in the northwest suburbs that she relies heavily on. But it's a lot of it, I got to be honest with you, and a lot of it is there are resources, and what I'm hoping that Advocate can do is sometimes you just need somebody to play a great big game of connect the dots. If you have somebody steering the ship, then if they're able to help you connect the dots to the right place, you take they have a heavier foot than a person calling around. If you're a mom in crisis and the school has handed you back your child and said they can't come back to school until they have a psychiatric evaluation, here's a printed list of people that you can call. Have a great time. What Kim's staff does that's different and what District 21 does is that Kim doesn't take that list and go, okay, well, you go ahead and call that list. Your staff has set the standard in that you're not just handing people off with a list. Those people are getting connected. What your relationship with Advocate, and every once in a while, somebody calls me and says, hey, I need this 10 minutes ago, can you help? It just shortens that time that you can get connected to it. But it's a shuffle that goes on from one end of the state to the other. And we actually have more resources in this Northwest community area than there are in the entire rest of the state. It doesn't make it any easier, but hopefully with a big heavy foot like a hospital system and a couple of the other relationships that she's created, I think that will help shorten the distance. And I will tell you, Omni just, honored Kim on their Facebook for being a hero. And so I think the work that the district is doing is, I'm going to use a Phil Pritzker line, which is, this is lighthouse work. This really is lighthouse work that's making the district different than most of the districts around us. So, my compliments to you, to Sammy, to Dr. DeMuth, and to everybody is that the conversations going on around our area are that we're setting the standard of what people should be doing.
And I also want to give a big shout out to our social workers, our school-based staff, our health assistants.
And the
because-
advocates, I mean, the North Cook advocates have made a huge.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about connecting, the dots, there are, a multitude of stories of social workers that have spent hours and hours and hours, when we have a SAS call that we need to make and connecting and trying to find a bed, and they can't do it all, right? I mean, there are also, people that have full caseloads of providing, mandated minutes through the IEP process. And so it really is a complete team effort. They do it well, so.
Absolutely.
Bill, you had a question?
Just a very quick clarifying question. You mentioned 82 students being served by Omni. Is that served to date or being served at the moment?
I'm sorry? To the moment, yeah. Yeah. Again, from a capacity perspective.
Well, I know that's, I was
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
understand the
right,
capacity. That's why I
yeah,
asked the question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Next item is the winter student assessment update.
Yes, so we, right before winter break, completed our winter map. We have now entered also into assessment season, where, students across the district will be taking the Access assessment, which is our English language learners assessment. And then, of course, as we get into March, it is state testing season with the Illinois assessment of readiness. But tonight, Dr. Childress is going to bring the board up to date on our winter 2023 map data. So,
Yeah. So before I jump into the data, I think that the community partnership discussion was an excellent segue in terms of helping us keep perspective, right? Because our staff in our schools are working really, really hard to both meet our students' academic needs, but also all of their non-academic needs. And they kind of mesh, right? And they flow and they influence one another. And so, I want to make sure that I acknowledge and highlight, all of our staff in our building, as well as our teams that are here at the Ad Center, in terms of just really trying to navigate all the needs of our students and our staff and still, right, hold ourselves accountable and make strides with achievement, but also trying to keep it in perspective that there's a lot of factors that play into how students are achieving in our schools. And they're not all the same because we have a very diverse district as well. So, and then I do also want to just take a moment and thank Amy Kipley. Every time we get ready to do one of these presentations, she's our data manager in the district, and she will pull data. And as soon as she sends me the first group of slides, I push back and say, oh, now I want to see this, and I want to see this, and I want to see this. And we go down the rabbit hole, and she's very patient with me. And so I want to make sure that I acknowledge her and all of her efforts, all of which, right, there's a lot of slides here. If you looked at it, there are a lot of slides, and they didn't all make it into all of the slides I asked her to put together didn't make it into this presentation, but they're important for me to see as I work with principals and we work with our E&L team to look at things from a variety of different lenses so that we can better support our teachers who are supporting the students in the classroom. We're going to start with our MAP reading achievement data. And so this is typically I just show you 1 year at a time. For this presentation, I wanted to show you a comparison. So looking at last year winter compared to this year winter and what is happening, what do we see happening? In terms of looking at grades, not cohort, but grades, right? We see a summary of basically closing the gap in second, fourth, sixth, and eighth, with fourth and sixth grade meeting the projections. Still not, right, exactly what we want to see. We definitely want to see those diamonds within those blue bars, but we are seeing some efforts with closing of the gap, maintaining at third and fifth, so not really seeing the gap close there just yet, and seeing a widening at seventh. And I will tell you that we had lots of discussion in the team about seventh, and as a mother of a seventh grader, I feel comfortable in saying that seventh graders are special, right? There's developmental things that happen at seventh grade as well as a number of other things, but we are looking at other effects besides just that they're special in seventh grade and trying to figure out what's happening there with those students. And then these are charts, right, that you're familiar with because I've shared them a number of times. One thing that I did different for this presentation was, again, I put this year's data next to last year's data. So just to kind of highlight what we're looking at fall to winter growth. And then on the left, you see this year's fall to winter growth. And then you see 22 fall to winter growth. And one of the reasons I wanted to look at this, especially for, right, these particular things, because remember that this is based on a bell curve. And so, right, 50% is middle of the road there. Still not, right, where we want to be with the growth with some of our students. However, we are seeing, right, second, fourth, and fifth, some growth there, third grade kind of staying the same. And then if we're looking at cohorts, right? So for example, if we look at second graders last year, so that 22 second grade column compared to third grade 23, right? We're seeing some increase there. We are seeing some growth with how many students are meeting their target. It's a lot of data, I know. And then when we're looking here at our middle schools, again, we're seeing sixth and eighth showing, right, more students meeting their growth targets this year than last year. And then the cohort sixth to seventh grade showing some progress, and seventh to eighth is showing about the same. I think the big picture, right, kind of looking overall, we're seeing that about 4% more of our students met their target this year than they did last year. So while the numbers aren't as high as we would like them to be, right, we are still at least showing that the efforts of our staff are better meeting the needs of kids, helping them meet their growth targets. Are there any questions about those?
A statistics question, really, more than anything else. We've been hearing tonight about the growth of numbers of students we have who are coming into our district. When we're testing, are we pulling out some of those numbers separately as they're not really, they're being introduced to our educational system? Are these numbers without those students or with those students?
Yeah, so some of the students, we do exempt them from the assessments because, right, if they're newcomers, right, and depending on their grade and depending on their English acquisition. So some of our kiddos that are new have enough English to take some assessments in English and give us some fruitful data. And some of them, their English acquisition is not well enough. So
would that skew the data to some degree? The more of them that we include, does that skew the overall data as we're looking?
Yes, but we're using basically like the same thresholds as far as newcomers, right? So it's not an individual thing, like, so if a student came 2 years ago, they're not being exempt. We are assessing them.
But if a student came in October of this year, they're not going to be included in these numbers?
No, not unless their English proficiency is high enough, because we screen them for EL purposes, and then depending on what that screener says, if their English proficiency is high enough, we assess them, and if it's not, we wait to assess them.
That makes these numbers more useful. Good. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions on that? Okay. So looking at, again, I wanted to share these slides because they're slides I've shared previously in terms of some of our, growth with race and ethnicity, similar patterns to what we have seen before. These are data points that we dig in more like on a building by building basis because the demographics in each building are so variant. That's a piece that we look at from a building level more deeply, but I did want to share that here as well as the subgroups. Because remember, again, when we talk about our designations, depending on the building. Some buildings have, 2 subgroups, other buildings have 7 subgroups. It really just depends on their student demographics. And those are pieces that we really drill into more, again, at the building level. But also just wanted to share some of the overviews here with you. Similar patterns to what we've seen in the past with that data. And then our schools, again, just, right, not broken down by grade, but just by building in general, as far as what do we see happening. We really would like to see these numbers at the 50th and higher, but again, realizing that, there's some additional challenges with reading that I'll talk about a little bit more a little bit later in the presentation. And then we're seeing, right, more students at our middle school level hitting their growth targets. And again, I definitely believe that one of the key factors of that is because of students being, right, with us longer and working their way, with us having such a large EL population. As their English acquisition increases, then they're, able to better meet some of their targets and their growth targets with that. And still, right, working hard to try and get those more students to meet their growth targets, but definitely seeing better percentages at the middle school level. Any questions about those before I leave them? So when we look at our reading achievement data, again, it followed the same kind of sequence with putting the 2023 data on the left, and so that we could look at it not just with this year's data, but look at cohort data and seeing how our students are doing. And so, we had already identified, some gaps with our reading instruction, some of which is, I think a result of COVID, and right, so we were backtracking different things like, okay, this year's 5th graders were at what grade when they had, right, remote learning or semi-remote learning, and so what are the pieces that they missed, right? They missed phonics and phonemic awareness and all these key foundational, and when I say they missed it, it's not that our teachers weren't teaching it, but it's harder to teach that over the computer than it is to do some of that instruction in person with students. And so looking at, again, cohorts, I'm going to jump quick here to this slide just because it's a lot of data. If we're looking at cohorts, right, the blue, green, yellow bands, those are the bands we want to see increase, right? So the high to high average groups, we want to see those increases. We see the biggest increase from 2nd to 3rd, and then some nominal increases, right, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. When we look at middle school, we do see a decrease there, that 6th to 7th decrease. And again, right, I could go on my soapbox about 7th graders, but I won't. And again, that's not the only thing, right? We're looking at curriculum pieces closer to figure out, where there might be some other things that we need to make some adjustments. But I think one of our definite celebrations is when we look at our red group. So those are our students that typically, we're not able to put all of our red students into tier 3 interventions in our buildings, but we do, those are the students that receive. We pull from that group. And we are seeing some good decreases of that red group, and that's what we want to see, right? We want to see that red group start to decrease. And so that definitely is something that we're seeing all across the grade level. So I'll just go real quick, just again, right? So you have the actual grade by grade slides, but I think it's just easier to see in this picture, right? And we color coded it. The greens are moving in the right direction. The red is an area of concern that we're digging deeper into from a curricular level. Questions for me about those pieces? And then again, right, looking at race and ethnicity, we're finding similar patterns as that we have previously. And again, that's work that, we definitely look at it at the district level, but more of that work happens, looking at those pieces at the building level, because not all buildings have subgroups of all those demographics. And then the same for this other subgroup of data. Again, really, one of the things that we're continually looking at is EL and what's happening with EL. Talking regularly with Anya and our teams as far as what other adjustments do we need to make, pushing a little bit harder. We've actually done quite a bit of, Amy Kipley has, with my direction, right, has done a lot of disaggregation on languages of our ELs and how they're performing and some of those other pieces. So lots of work and data analysis happening there that then we're gonna start, making some modifications as needed for students. And then looking at our elementary buildings, we know that we have some of our buildings that are higher performing than other buildings. But again, right, different buildings have different needs and students with different needs. And so those are all points of consideration that we're looking at. I will share that, right, knowing that some schools have different challenges, in comparison to others, we really are, now I'm getting more into wanting to have more two-way conversations with our staff as far as, okay, now we've got a couple of years of data, let's talk about what their hypotheses are, right? We have our hypotheses based on what we know from a curriculum scope and sequence piece, but needing to have more conversations with our staff about what are some of the challenges that you're having, both academically and not academically, so that we can start also addressing some of those other pieces. And so in some of those efforts, we actually have just pushed out or are pushing out this evening in the ENL update to our administrators, some listening tour dates where members of my team are going to go with myself with some questions, as well as just kind of open discussion for staff to be able to share with us what's helping them, in terms of scope and sequence or other things, interventions, and what are some of the challenges that they're facing that maybe aren't coming out through data or other pieces, but just real life challenges that they're dealing with in their classrooms, to try and figure out how we can better meet their needs in supporting our students. And so those listening tour dates are going to start in February, and of course they'll be voluntary, and I hope that staff in our building do come and share with us so that we can improve, because that's what our goal is, right? To just continually improve to meet the needs of our students. And then of course, right, continuing classroom visits so that we have some first-hand anecdotal data as well as far as what we see happening in the classrooms. I know in the buildings, there's some days where I'm in the building and I hear the radio go off quite a bit, right, with things that are happening, and those are non-academic things that are impacting the learning of our students every day. So definitely want to spend some more time listening and learning about those pieces that don't show up here. And so similar with middle school, right? Again, following similar patterns to what we have been seeing in terms of achievement data. Some of the considerations when we're looking at our data, right? We know that there's been a lot of studies about COVID and the impact of COVID. And from that, we know that reading has been hit more significantly than math. There's a lot of studies that show that. I know Bill asked about our ELs, right? And that impact, that definitely has an impact, whether they're new to the country or just have been here with us, right? They're still English learners.
Can I ask you, from that data, from what we say the reading is more significantly impacted from COVID, have they done a study to see if it's not so much by COVID, but it's harder to teach reading remotely as to math? And if that's the case, would it be advisable if we have another weather day to emphasize perhaps more math teaching on days like that, rather than the reading?
It's an interesting question. There's all kinds of different data. Again, lots of information about the whole phonics and phonemic awareness, all of those foundational reading pieces, right? And how challenging that can be to teach remotely. Those are pieces that, again, if kids miss some of those pieces, making that transition from learning to read to reading to learn is going to be a much more challenging thing, but definitely for a conversation. So thank you for that. We'll spend some time looking at that.
So on that same topic, I would add the question, having lived through it with my grandkids, remote learning during the pandemic, with the younger grades, I'm not convinced personally that it's very easy to get the youngest of our students to really do much with remote learning. I mean, I saw it with my grandkid. I saw how tough it was for my wife. How do we deal with that? Because it just, an older kid, I saw my older grandson jump right in and follow teacher's instructions. I saw the youngest of our grandkids struggling with that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that it's a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge for teachers. I think that they do what they can to modify the lessons so that they are more remote learning friendly, right? And that takes a lot of thought and a lot of planning on behalf of our teachers, but I think that they do the best job that they can with trying to make those as meaningful as they can. It's not the same as having a kid in front of you. And again, when you have young learners who are learning words and pronunciation of words, I mean, not just for ELs, but for all learners, like those subtleties in articulation, they're a little bit harder to hear remotely. So, I mean, I think that, again, our staff does the best that they can with that situation.
Well, I'm not criticizing our staff at all.
No, I know you're
how hard
not.
they work.
Yeah.
And if I could just add, I mean, I think that the major problem here with COVID, it was the length of time, the cumulative effect of the length of time that students were either social distancing, wearing masks, as well as being, remotely instructed. We've had 2 remote instruction days since 2022. Right. So it is not a common occurrence. We should have had 3, but power outages being what they were on Friday, that we failure to launch. However, so I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the impact is absolutely aggravated, particularly for those students that were in the primary grade levels during COVID. But we are largely past that particular barrier. And a remote day, on a snow day is not going to be significantly negatively impacting. And again, as we've talked about before, just the whole concept, try tacking on a day at the end of the school year to make it up. And, I wonder about, how useful that is, right? So I think we look at the usefulness of engaging in some academic instruction and work, even remotely on those very, occasions, it's not negatively impacting overall what we're seeing here.
And then some of our core curriculum resources in reading, right, are newer than some of our math resources, and our staff are working hard still to realize what adjustments need to be made, as well as our team and working with teams of teachers. I think, in these next few slides, there's a lot of information about adjustments that have been made over the last few years. And I will say that our staff really have just been rolling with, right, making these adaptations as we're looking at data and seeing and things that they're seeing in the classrooms and needs of kids. Lots of adjustments being made, not just with our gen ed programming, right, but within, so you'll see some things that are noted specific to our Russian programming, some of them that are both crossing over English and Spanish programming, right, with tier 1 primary resources and tier 3. Looking at the development of our Spanish language arts scope and sequence, which wasn't as tight, and making sure that it's aligned to the Illinois Spanish language arts standards, and as well as our ELD standards, and the updating of our scope and sequence, because again, right, as we're seeing different things happening with our kids, we have to adapt, and we have to be able to support our teachers as they're trying to also adapt to meeting the needs of students. This summer, we had a lot, one of the, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we identified was some gaps with our students, with their phonics in particular. And so, spent, quite a bit of time working with our staff. And again, I'm really glad to see so many teachers, engaging in the opportunities that we have to learn, new things and ask questions and, challenge but also share some of their successes. We've been hearing some great successes as our staff has jumped into utilizing some of the new resources that have been provided, and having them share with their peers, because that's really, I think really holds a lot of weight when we can have one of our teachers who's a leader in a building say, I've been using this resource and this is how it's helping my students, or this is how I'm using it to help my students, is a much more powerful message than, we have the vendors come in and do the training, but the fruit is when you can actually see it in your classroom. And so, I'm really glad to see so many teachers stepping up and sharing at staff meetings and different venues as far as some of the successes that they're having. Again, right, just more professional development, working with grade level teams, our specialists going in and working with teams, but also individual teachers, and doing some co-planning. We've done some book clubs. The literacy team has done some book clubs, which we've been seeing some great participation in. And so just, I think the takeaway is there's a lot of work going in to try and best meet the needs of students at all different levels. And that, shouldn't go unnoticed. Some more information about, right, some book clubs and some of the district level planning. And again, it's not, some of it is about us needing to adjust curriculum pieces, right, which we've been doing and working on. And then some of it is about, okay, now how do we help our teachers, right, better work with the students and using those new resources. Any questions for me on that? Thinking about next steps, right? I know that, we're hearing about the Illinois literacy plan. It's still in draft form. It's it's still in draft form. I'll just say that. We're checking regularly to see when it's not going to be in draft form. But that being said, we already had started making some changes even before that plan was released, because we've seen it in our data that there were some of those gaps that I've already identified with phonics. And so some of those changes have already been in process. As far as looking at the alignment, we're pretty well aligned at this point to the plan, but it is still in draft form. So, still waiting for the official piece of that, and you'll hear more of that once that comes. We'll spend some time bringing our board and our public up to speed on some of that. But these are some of the next steps that we're looking at as far as continuing the work to support our teachers, and again, making sure that the curriculum is aligned to meeting the needs of the students, as well as exposing them to grade level standards. Any questions about those? Yes.
Well, just kind of a general question. I see a huge amount of work on content and curriculum, as well it should be. My question is, I know there's been a lot of negativity towards teaching a test, and I'm not suggesting that at all. My question really is, do we need to do more, or what are we doing to teach kids how to take a test, which may be different? And if they don't know how to take a test, I could see scores being lower than they might have been otherwise.
Mm-hmm. I think that, our teachers do some of that work. I think part of the challenge is all of the tests are different, right? So this presentation is about MAP. It's not exactly like IAR, right? Like one of the key things that we've identified in MAP, the kids can't go back and reread things, right? In IAR, they actually can go back and reread things. So that's an additional challenge, if you will, because we teach kids to go back and reread things and highlight things, and the assessment just isn't built that way, right? It does give us some key data points as far as, again, curricular pieces, right? Where we're maybe not spending enough time, but it has those pieces that are also a challenge. We have our common assessments, and so that is another piece. I know Dr. Conley and I have talked about, future presentations and what some of those pieces will be. So you'll be hearing about what we're seeing in our common assessment data, which is tightly aligned to our curriculum and, the instruction in our classrooms, and what is that data showing. So we have to look at all of these pieces of data, right? Our map, our IAR, our common assessment, as well as, again, I think spending the time listening and talking with our teachers about what are they seeing, right, in their day-to-day assessment of kids and how they're doing and what are the challenges and what are their successes, so that we can continue to build on the successes and support them with whatever the challenges are. So it's a tricky thing, Arlen, to say we're going to teach kids how to better take a test, because all of the tests are different.
Well, right, but wouldn't we then do something in front of each of these key tests
Yeah, and I do think that the
to
teachers.
do that? And do
yeah.
we do that?
Yeah, I think that the teachers do that. I think the challenge is it's so much assessing already as it is. And so we try and give them at least some foundational pieces, but it's more than anything is if we can get our students to be strong readers, right? And build those foundational pieces, it's gonna transfer, right? It is. Part of it is how do you take the test, but we can't spend all our time on that. And it feels like we spend a lot of time on it already. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Jumping to our math. So, right, similar format of the slides. Now here with our math, we actually have seen, this is a huge celebration for what we're seeing happening with the growth of our students and as far as they're meeting their projections. So you see, again, remember that we want for those diamonds to be within those blue bars, and for the bars to be as far extended as possible above those diamonds. And so seeing some really good data here, right, with more of those bars higher than the diamonds for sure. So all grade levels, right, meeting or exceeding the projected growth norms for the district in terms of comparing district data. So that is definitely a celebration.
Dr. Childress, any insight into what was driving that? Was there anything new that was implemented that you attribute the increase to?
Well, I think that, again, there's, and I have it in some of the other slides, I think that our teachers are working really hard and implementing new strategies, taking advantage of things, working collaboratively. I think, as much as, right, it's like painstaking with all of the assessments, we are seeing them spending time looking at data and having conversations within their teams, within their, building PLCs. I think that, when you know where you're at, then you can figure out where you need to go, right? And so I think that is some of it, but really, it's the teachers just really, really pushing and trying new strategies and doing more. We've seen, we've been working with them more on meaningful games to build foundational math skills, as well as just other ways to engage the learners. There's not one factor. There's a lot of key factors that come into play. Definitely, I think that we're seeing, all of the labor that our teachers are putting in and working with our kiddos. We're starting to see it here. And then again, remember our math resource has been in place for a very long time. Like, I'm not even sure, a very long time.
I would also say that, math is a more universal language, right? And so, when we have the number of English learners that we have in the district, becoming, really mastering those literacy skills, with such variance in language backing it's an additional challenge. That's not to say that challenge doesn't exist in math. There's a lot of vocabulary in math. There's a lot of language, but the concepts, the numbers, that it tends to be a more universal language. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and we transition our ELs in particular, we transition them to English earlier with math. they make that transition starting in second grade versus third grade, which is where, right, depending on what their English acquisition is, a lot of kids are making that transfer of language in third grade for reading. In math, that transition is made at second grade.
We've seen that actually for a long time, I think, that same equation.
Always.
So again, these slides follow similar format as to the reading slides, where we have the 2023 data on the left, and then the 2022 on the right, again, to be able to look at how grade levels are performing year to year, but also how those cohorts are performing. And so in math, actually all of our cohort groups, except for the fifth grade, you know, we're showing some really good improvement. However, even though that fourth to fifth, right, we're not seeing a jump. That, you know, fourth in 2022 was at 52, and then looking at them as fifth graders, 51% of them. When we look fifth to fifth, right, so looking at this year's fifth graders in comparison to last year's fifth graders, we had more kids meeting their growth target, which means, right, changes that teachers are making to their instruction, it is having an impact because we're seeing that change at the fifth grade level. And then when we look at middle school, we've made some other changes to the middle school in terms of, you know, we're piloting a resource called Desmos at the middle school that's been receiving very positive feedback from both our teaching staff as well as our students. And our, you know, middle school math teachers are really embracing, you know, some of the book study work that's being done, and, you know, utilizing those strategies. And we definitely think that that's helping show some positive growth. And this actually is some of the strongest growth data that we've seen, at least in terms of in large pieces, right? Since I've been here. So, I mean, that's a huge celebration, and, you know, definitely showing the fruits of the labor from, you know, from the teaching staff and their work with our students in terms of those pieces. And remember too, that we made that shift where teachers were then, right, moved into where they're teaching more of one core area instead of being asked to teach multiple core areas. And I'm sure that that has really helped them, right, as far as getting some of that time back and being able to spend more concentrated time on the math and the planning of math and working with their colleagues, and doing all of those pieces. I think that definitely has been some of the impact that we're seeing. That was helpful for them to not ask them to teach so many different subject areas, but focus on one.
With Desmos in particular, I had the opportunity to follow Mr. DeMuth through several classrooms over at Cooper, and one of them, sixth grade? Yeah, it was sixth grade math class. And so I was able to see a Desmos lesson being taught, and it was impressive. The level of struggle that students were engaging in. This was not a teacher-directed, you know, I mean, they were working through problem solving, modeling answer. I mean, it was, to be honest, I didn't learn math that way, right? So, you know, it took me a moment to try and orient myself as to what are they doing? You know, so it really is very impressive.
And our math classrooms are one of the groups that are on the docket, right, to get new furniture and some of the, you know, giving them learning environments that lend themselves better to the strategies that they're using with the students, I think is really going to also help, right, making sure that they have that vertical white space to be able to do some of the, you know, groupings with students that they're doing. And, you know, we've kind of pushed back a little bit and gotten some feedback from them as far as, okay, here's kind of what we're thinking now. What other ideas do you have? And they've given some really good suggestions and just really forward thinking on, right, we're trying to use these new strategies. And so we need learning environments that lend themselves to those, to be able to do those things with students. So I think that those are, you know, all going to see some really great pieces for us as we continue to move forward. But again, really some really impressive data. Anytime we get past that 50% mark, so when you're looking at 58, 62% of students meeting those growth goals, and those growth goals are aggressive. So that's something to be acknowledged. And when we look, overall, again, right, trying to digest and just do a more of a bulleted summary piece of it, overall, we had 9% more of our students meet their growth goals, and that's huge. I mean, that's huge.
So I have a question. So math is clearly, I was impressed at all of the growth goals. I mean, that's significant year over year. Anytime you get 9 or 10% growth year over year, and then you look at the overall data. So without putting you on the spot or anything, can you focus in on something that clicked for you as one significant thing from year over year? There's a lot of pieces to why you see such significant growth over year for year, especially when you look at the total. But if you're thinking through it, is there any one thing that captures your eye as being something that was really super significant in making a difference in the numbers?
I mean, I definitely think not asking teachers to teach so many preps.
Okay.
And so that's something that Dr. Conley and I have talked about, is like, do we look at some of that at the upper elementary grades, right? Because I definitely think that, it's a time game, right? It always is. And there's so much prep work that takes into creating lessons for students and meaningful lessons for students and trying to do strategies and group work and all of that. So I think that that's, a big piece of it. I do think that the new resource lends itself a little bit more to it, but when you can give teachers back time, and we're not asking them to split themselves right into.
I think that's a huge deal.
Preps.
I think acknowledging that makes it, I think it's a huge deal. I think if anytime you can acknowledge what's making a difference and run with it, and those are numbers that would get my attention, and I'd want to, run with that.
Yeah.
And the hard work, it's not easy. You see the other shoe of COVID falling a little bit in sort of in different places. And so to be able to climb out of it in certain ways and see not just growth, but significant growth with strategies implemented, in a district like this where we're always learning and we're always looking for different ways because we're always changing, to be able to identify something that made a big difference.
Mm-hmm. I do think though, right, and that's why I really wanted to block the time where we get to go and just listen to teachers and let them share with us. I'm really interested to hear what are the things that they are pointing to that have, again, what is helping them and what is not helping them, right? And how can we continue to make adjustments to better support them in their meeting the needs of our students.
I think I can speak on my behalf and probably everybody here that we're looking forward to hearing that feedback as well.
And then again, right, wanting to kind of stay focused on those bigger pieces, but knowing that we do have to look at subgroups. It just kind of transfers, right? So we're seeing higher growth percentages, and it's carrying through in the subgroup data as well, in terms of race and ethnicity, but also all of these other subgroups. And so, I think that's, it's really good. I'm really excited for, all of the efforts that have been made to be able to see it transfer into data, because sometimes it can be very deflating, right? When we know that our staff is working so hard and we don't sometimes see it transfer the way we hoped it would transfer into the data. And then similar, right, when we're looking school by school, we definitely see some buildings having a better growth than others. And again, I think that this is where some of that listening tour piece, comes in, because we do know that different buildings have different challenges. That's just part of our reality, right? We have a very diverse district and different needs at different buildings. But, I think that data is one piece of the equation, and we need to see that, doing through classroom walks, as well as just listening and talking with our teaching staff. But when you just kind of look at this, to just do a quick summary of it, right? 6 schools are showing beyond typical growth. Anytime we get above that 50th percentile, considered beyond typical growth. And so 6 schools showing that is, I think is, definitely noteworthy, and, to those efforts. And then same for the middle school. So we see, right, all across the board, that growth in the middle school is really great. And so, that's carrying through as well. Questions about any of those growth slides before I move on? So when we look at our achievement data, math, I think reading followed more similar patterns grade to grade for the most part. So I'm showing you this slide and showing you the next slide, but I think time would be better spent just talking about the summary slide, because there's so many pieces to digest in the bar graphs, but you at least have the bar graphs if you want to go back and look at spans. So again, remember, we kind of group our achievement bands, the blue, the green, and yellow. Those are the ones that we want to continue to see grow, particularly those blue and green bands. And so, right, when we're looking at cohort data, second to third, we're kind of seeing it stay kind of steady. One thing I can tell you about that is the rigor from second to third it's just like these huge jumps that are asked of students and teachers when you look at the kind of content type of things. It's kind of like, okay, you're not a little guy anymore. Now, like, boom, right? And there's like a pretty big jump that's asked of teachers moving students from second to third grade. Some increase there at that third to fourth. And then we're seeing these decreases in the 6. Now, what's interesting about these pieces, and as we look at, again, multiple data points, and again, I'm really curious to hear what some of the feedback from our teaching staff is going to be, but because I hear it filtered through other people sometimes, right? So I want to hear it firsthand. But when we looked at some of our IAR pieces, the 4th to 5th showed a similar pattern as MAP did. The 5th to 6th, IAR showed an incline, so an increase 4th to 5th. So that's different than this MAP data. We didn't see the decrease in IAR, but we did see the decrease from 5th to 6th. So that too is, interesting when you see that the data contradicts it, we see some contradictory pieces. So, and we're in the midst right now of doing the common assessment data. So that'll be another data point for us to look at and say, like, okay, where are there commonalities or discrepancies in the data, and why do we think that that's happening? And then on the flip side with the red, again, remember that the students that are falling in that red achievement band, those are students who are eligible. Not all of them get the support, but some of them are eligible to get that tier 3 more intensive support. And so that, in a combination with the instruction that they're getting from their normal classroom teacher, and these numbers, obviously we want that red group to decrease, and we are definitely seeing some good decreases in the math data, and that definitely is the step in the right direction. That's what we want to see. Questions for me on that? And then again, right, similar patterns as in the past as far as looking at achievement data with the subgroups. And those are all pieces, again, that at the building level, depending on the demographics of a school, that we're looking at and breaking down and doing more legwork on that. But I did want to just share the overview pieces with you here, but we're seeing similar patterns as we have in the past, as far as there might be some changes in the bands, but for the most part, when you're comparing just overall this subgroup to this subgroup, we're seeing similar gaps that we've been seeing. And so that's just a challenge that we have to keep working on and digging into the data to figure out how we can start to see more closing of some of those gaps. We're seeing some, but not as much as I would like for us to be able to see. And then again, right, looking building by building. And a lot of these pieces get, addressed and talked about and discussed at the building level through SIP plans. And, just realizing and recognizing that all of our buildings are different and they have different challenges. And so we just have to continue to work together to figure out how we can continue to push forward and try and push that academic achievement in the midst of the reality of all of the other non-academic pieces that our staff and our building administrators are dealing with. And then again, similar patterns to what we've seen before with the achievement in our three middle schools. Any questions about any of those before I move on? So again, right, looking at, what are some of the shifts and things that have been made, since we have more and more data that we can look at and reflect upon, we've been able to make some concerted efforts to the scope and sequence to have some clearer guidance for our staff. We've added some supplemental resource pieces with mindset math. And again, right, looking at strategies that teachers can use, looking at more engaging pieces. And, again, there's been a variety of staff all across the district who have really jumped in and been able to be leaders, teachers that are, leading some of those things and talking about the successes that they have. And as well as sharing challenges that they had and how they moved past them or not. And I think that's how we all get better, right? It's just by sharing and improving our craft. I talked a little bit about the games integration. That's, to try and increase that fact fluency. Academic vocabulary is always a thing that has to be honed in on, and especially when, for all learners, but in particular, right, when we're talking about EL learners, to make sure that we're spending the time on the academic vocabulary and consistent in the vocabulary that we're using. And then still working with supporting on tier 2 interventions. We have our specialists, right, that are pushing into buildings and working and trying to support both individual teams, grade level teams, as well as administrators and individual teachers. We've had a lot of teachers who are reaching out and tapping them and asking them to come and co-plan with them. And so that's really great for our people to be on the ground doing those pieces with our teachers and learning from them and being able to figure out what other adjustments need to be made in terms of curriculum pieces. And then again, the strategies, right? Doing some of the book studies. And again, we have about 8 staff participating in those pieces in doing some of those book studies. At the middle school level, I already talked about the Desmos, and then, the widespread implementation of the building thinking classroom. So, again, teachers working really hard on trying to improve their craft and meet the needs of our students. Looking at tier 2, right, spending some time looking at the development of the skills progression resource. So basically what that means is there's a document that says, here's the grade level. If the student is missing these skills, this is what grade that should have gotten developed in. And here are pointing back to some of the resources to help get those kids those skills that they're lacking, right? And so just more of a one-stop shop to try and help teachers so that they don't have to figure that out on their own, that some of that work has already been done for them. And then we also had added this year an additional math interventionist at homes because that building is discrepant, when we look at the data from the other 2 buildings. And one of the things that we're doing right now is breaking down our students who have been getting tier 3 interventions. And so again, most likely in a future presentation, I'll be sharing some of that information, probably when we talk about MTSS, to be able to share some of that with you. And I think that's my last slide. Sorry for the long presentation. Questions for me?
I guess mine is very impressive presentation. Lots of great things going on, certainly in the reading program, lots of new materials. In the past, we've looked at school improvement plans when buildings need. So my question is, what's the follow-up? How do we look at all the great stuff we've done that's on the table, and between now and the next year, and I know we're dealing with different students at each grade, but how do we then try to do better, certainly in the reading area? And it's a hard task. I have no answers for you. But.
So, right, I meet with building principals on their school improvement plans individually. They have kind of a template that they're asked to follow. Because we have a large EL population, they all have to have an EL related goal and then math and a reading goal. And then they build out, right? So I talk with building administrators about what are realistic goals, right? Based on whatever previous data we have and whatever gains that they've been making. And then they work with their building PLC teams to talk about, okay, right, here's some of the goals. What are some of the action steps that we need to take, and identifying those supports that they need. And that just happens continuously all through the year. It's not a one time a year thing. It's constantly happening. Our building administrators review those things with the staff on, sometimes institute days, sometimes school improvement days, depending on when those dates fall, because they're looking at the data pieces alongside, right, those school improvement plans. And those are living documents. They're not stagnant. And, as far as making sure that we're giving staff the opportunity to have those conversations about what are some of the action steps that need to happen. It's an ongoing process. It's not simple at all.
No, I'm sure it's not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have two more, and I promise they are both extremely brief. But I'm going to just spend just a couple of minutes on providing the board with kind of a status report on student attendance. As we saw in our school report cards in October, and as is a problem nationwide, we have an unacceptably high chronic student absence rate, 26% in the district. No school in the district having a less than double-digit percentage of chronic absence. And chronic absence is defined as any absence, excused or unexcused, that it hits that 10% of the school year mark, right? And so it is a deep concern. It is something that our buildings, our schools have been tackling. I mean, I can point to, a lot of the work that at Frost, at Twain, and others where attendance challenges and really just trying to educate parents about the importance of making sure the kids are in school every day, but we need to start really looking at some data. And so to that point, what you have here is a breakdown of where our student attendance percentage by school is between August and December. And what you'll see is that by and large, we're in the low 90s, the lower to mid 90% range of student attendance on, average on a daily basis. Anytime you go lower than 95%, that's generally not a good thing, right? Obviously, we want it to be as close to 100% as we possibly can, but we're humans, so we're not always going to have 100%. We're not going to get 100%. But to have average attendance to be in those low 90s, that's not good. That isn't indicative of the fact that we have too many students that are not attending on a daily basis. Now, one of the things that I will also note is if you look at Hawthorne, and also those elementary schools that have preschool programs, it is not atypical for preschool attendance to be more of a intermittent. I mean, they get colds. There's it's too cold to go, they're little people, right? So we do see a higher kind of rate of absence, particularly in those schools that house our preschool programs, and that's somewhat kind of baked into the expectation. I don't know who's got if somebody could advance the slide. There we go. But I did want to also point out kind of the year over year average student attendance. And this is a little bit of a bright spot. So if you take a look between, and not unlike what Dr. Childress did in kind of formatting her slides, you can take a look at August 2022 and August 2023 and what the average percentage was. And so then in each one of those cases, we do see things improved this year over last year. And so as we continue to get farther and farther away from COVID, and we, kids are getting back into the swing, and we're having these conversations at the school level about the importance of getting to school, and even if you wake up late, get here. It's okay. Let's go. So we are seeing some improvement in our percentage of student attendance. If we can hit the next one. Now this one you can't see, I'm sorry. I should have blown this up a little bit more. But one of the things that we are also very closely tracking is the actual number of students that have been absent for 10% or more of their enrolled days currently. Right, and so you can see that, if, for example, at Cooper, there are 110 students that, to this point in the year, have missed 10% of their enrolled days. Now, that doesn't mean that they are going to stay, they're on track to being chronically absent. Right. Now, there could be a lot of reasons why some of that happens. You get a strep infection that puts you down for 5 days. Well, that's 5 absences, right? So we know there's a lot of mitigating things. However, we want to know who those students are, and because we want to be able to intervene, we want to be able to have those conversations to determine what's happening. Is it you had a really nasty flu, or one of our principals, their child had mono and then appendicitis. So they got a little nasty gram from the high school about missing too many days. Well, okay, there's reason. So we understand that those are things that absolutely occur. Again, pointing out the fact that those elementary schools in Hawthorne that have preschool programs, their numbers are higher, and we somewhat expect that. But one of the things that we actually began, and a shout out to Art on Mike's team, who is our Power School guru, is that as we return from winter break, each principal is getting a weekly alert on Friday that is giving them the names of students who are in that zone, right? And so in addition to that, Dr. Childress and I are getting a weekly email that is giving us a district dashboard by building of the number of students that are in each one of those buildings that is, on track to being chronically absent. So it's really kind of, one of the things that we really kind of talked about is the fact that, our building administrators, building leaders are being pulled in so many different directions. That it's hard to keep track if you have to manually kind of go in and be taking a look at your attendance lists and things of that nature. So we really were looking for a way to automate some of that and to put that alert out there to kind of say, hey, this kid just came on the radar because, well, and maybe they had strep, right? And, but it's still something that it kind of gives that trigger for our building leaders to be able to go, need to follow up, or no, we've got a plan for this one. So again, it's really just trying to make sure that they have the information to try and intervene as early as possible. And that's kind of a new, not kind of new, it is new, but we were able to put that together. We are also I'm going to be forming at the district level a student attendance working group that will include teacher representatives, building principal, or principalship, leadership representatives, our some of our health office staff, because, again, obviously they are, dealing with, the absences, to really kind of take a look at how can we augment the things that schools are already doing. And also, are there areas that we need to tighten up at the district level? One of the things, just case in point, we have a lot of different types of attendance codes in Power School. We need to clean that up a little bit. The last time we really looked at our attendance codes was when we had to dissect them because of COVID. Like, we had to report differently. And so to be able to clean that up a little bit, and that has the function of then just making it more clear cut, and also making sure that our data is really solid, right? But we also want to have those conversations of, how do we better engage with the community, to have conversations about, with the wider community about the importance of attendance. And case in point, if we've got, our major orthodonture practices and they don't have a lot of night hours, how is that impacting student attendance? And so what are some of the conversations that we can have, and in partnership try and just kind of think differently about how, services that kind of get in the way of school, right? So we're going to be putting that group together, working on that right now, and it's something that by the spring, my intent is to just kind of have that kind of that layer of standardization and direction from the district to, again, augment the things that the buildings are already doing. I'm going to bring this back, where I'm going to keep you updated, more frequently in terms of where we are, because obviously, again, there was an article in the Washington Post today, where the White House has kind of said, help, you look at this. We were already looking at it, but, it is a national issue. So I'll answer any questions that you have.
Really quickly, I'm glad you're looking into the causes, and you're starting. Are we able to see if there's been an impact from the new mental health day law that kids are allowed to take so many mental health days?
It's been negligible, because again, remember that we're not always getting that level of specificity, and also if a child is being called in specifically for the reason of a mental health day, if that happens twice, part of that law is that we actually, our social work staff and our counseling staff need to follow up. And so we have not seen, I think you would probably see that maybe a little bit more pronounced at the high school level at this point. So it has been negligible, but it is absolutely something that we look at. And just the conversation that we're having statewide is, that was a great concept, except that, maybe we need to rethink some of that. Case in point, staying home, if I'm dealing with a little bit of depression and isolation, staying home may not necessarily be the best thing for me to do, right? Maintaining routine and kind of, the resiliency and grit to kind of, those are family decisions that need to be made. So, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are we yet touching any of the new North Cook truancy programs? Is that available to us yet?
It is. Now, truancy is a different thing. All right. Truancy is when you have 10% of or 18 school days that is unexcused, right? And so we have a very low unexcused absence rate, primarily because our staff, if we don't hear from a parent, we're finding, like, where's the kid? They've got the flu and I forgot to call in. Okay, that's an excused absence. So truancy is a different thing than chronic absence. But yes, we have, they need more of those resources.
Right.
But we absolutely have availed ourselves of that in those few areas where we do have truancy concerns.
Yeah, they're gonna staff that up.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And then last, but certainly not least, just a real quick update on the district's transportation committee that started meeting last month.
Thank you. I will be quick because obviously the culminating report comes in April, May for this. So just wanted to kind of give a background on what we've done in the 2 meetings we've had so far. We're scheduled for the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays of the month, other than Valentine's Day and spring break. So basically the purpose of the committee was to review the practices, process, procedures of District 21 in transportation, to formulate ideas to shape the future of our transportation program. We have some goals that really are meant to go ahead, get the information out to the working group, get the feedback and ideas from the working group so that we can collaborate on ideas that will shape the basis of how we move forward, recommendations from the administration to the board for the future transportation program in District 21. And as I said, April or May is when we hope to have that final report. The first meeting that we had, we basically went ahead and outlined the whole process of transportation to the working group members, which includes parents and administrators. And we talked about the important information as to who gets transportation, how they get it, why they get it. We talked about how we do routing. We talked about the assumptions we use in routing, and just looking at a bunch of data overall. And I won't bore you with this data tonight because we'll put it into the final presentation. But we talked about a lot of cost, ridership issues, hazardous routes, things like that in that first meeting. The last meeting, we took something that we've started to do in the district with a lot of our different PD groups and just working groups, which is saying, what do we do well? What could we do better? What should we stop doing, and what should we start doing? And so just a couple of the comments are up there, but we had a really robust discussion with the group that was present on a lot of the issues that impact their thoughts on the district's transportation system, things that they like, things that they don't like, things they'd like to see us doing. There really wasn't anything that we should stop doing, except there were a couple of parents who said they had heard we were writing up pre-K students, and I would say that is something we should definitely stop doing, because those little ones really don't have a lot of control over how they act on the bus at times. So they're just learning. So really what we looked at for our last number of meetings as we move forward, and we're going to start looking at hazardous routes in the next meeting, which will take a couple because of all the data that goes into looking at that. But we want to look at, are the routes appropriately created? That means how many kids are on a bus, what the route times are, how long the walk to stops are, the location of stops. We want to make sure that those are meeting the needs of the district. One of the things we knew we would look at and has come up with parents is, would we ever do a fee-for-service program? Meaning anybody who wants transportation can have it as long as they pay for it. And we've been starting to analyze a lot of the districts in the area that do this. District 25, District 15, District 34, they all do a fee-for-service model. They all have varying models. We have to look at how that impacts our transportation claim, how that impacts the dollars we receive, the dollars we'll have to put out, what happens to students that would normally be a fee waiver. So that's a conversation we're going to have, but it sounds like something that may be of interest in the district. Obviously, that will be something that we have to talk to first student about with regards to how many buses they have, how many drivers, what would the impact be. And then lastly, and something that really kind of was a focus when we got this all going is, do we have any hazardous routes to add? Because we have kids who there's an impediment to them getting to school, even if maybe they don't qualify under just the regular point system, using the discretionary points of the district, because those routes truly do impede a child's ability to get to school. And then also, are there any routes that we would remove from this hazardous designation based upon conditions that have now been upgraded, or different factors that impact transportation now that, you know, we've got crossing guards in places, stoplights and others, better sidewalks, better roadways. So these are all of the things that when we come back in the end that we will bring back recommendations on. Thus far, we've had really good conversations with the group. We have another meeting next week, and we hope to go ahead and continue that progress so that we bring forward some solid recommendations in April or May.
And that concludes the presentation portion of the evening.
Awesome. Okay, now we have reached the public comment section of our meeting. The board will allow any individual to share a public comment for up to 3 minutes. Such comments should not include the discussion of personnel matters, which should be brought directly to the attention of the appropriate school official. During public comment, the board and administration listen to comments but may not respond to the public. Leticia, have we received any?
No.
We have not? Okay, thank you. Mike, do we have anyone online? No. And Cass, have we gotten any written? Nothing? Okay, thank you. That was a nice short section. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. This month we received one Freedom of Information request. Conference and travel expenses for the board to approve are in the amount of $511.62, which include travel expenses of 3 board members. These were incurred during their attendance to the joint annual conference in November. Phil, did you have the opportunity to review the financials?
Thanks, Debbie. Yes, I did. I had 6 items that I had asked for clarification on. Everything was provided. I didn't have any follow-ups, so all good.
Awesome, thank you. Does anyone need anything pulled from the consent agenda? No. Okay, may I please get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
See?
Yes.
Phil?
Aye.
Dagmara?
Yes.
I vote yes. Debbie?
Yes.
Bill?
Aye.
Arlen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is new business. The first item is approval of the intergovernmental agreement between CCSD21 and CCSD21 for shared services of a director of school safety and security. Dr. Connolly.
So we're very excited to bring this item for consideration of the board this evening. Obviously, we have spent a lot of time over the past many years on school safety, and it's an ever-evolving concern. I can tell you that the number of hours that not only Kim Klein, but Michael and Mike Frantini have spent on this subject of school safety is daunting. There has been ongoing conversations, kind of more regionally about really getting to that point of districts maybe considering having that point person who is specifically focused on this issue of school safety, particularly with the level of coordination that needs to occur between school districts and municipalities and first responders and the planning and preparing. Back in I think it was September, maybe it was October, Kim did a presentation that kind of outlined the standard response protocols that we were implementing, our Crisis Go app. There's a lot to that. There's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of, we had our safety week. We'll have another safety week coming up in March. And so it just kind of came together that in November, and having some conversations, Michael was having conversations with one of his counterparts at District 59, and they too were starting to take a look at the possibility of developing kind of a point person position. And one of the things is that neither of us were really sure if each individual organization really that it needed to be a full-time position. It was something that we felt like it was important, and it certainly could evolve into a full-time needed position for each district. But there was a lot of good synergy opportunities to really take a look at this intergovernmental agreement for shared services, particularly because as District 59 is continuing to kind of take a look at their safety and security plans, there's opportunities for joint training and for joint coordination of efforts, particularly if they also implement the standard response protocol as we have already started to do. And so it really just kind of came together that this might be something that we should pursue. And so the action that you have, the first action that you have on this evening, is the approval of that intergovernmental agreement that establishes the shared services. And this is a 50-50 split. So, 50% of the work time of this director position will be serving District 21. The other 50%, will be serving District 59. And obviously, there's going to be crossover and coordination, very close coordination between the two districts. The District 59 board did approve this IGA in their meeting last Tuesday. And so in order for it to be in effect, it's just up to this board to make its determination. Michael, did you want to add anything? Nope. Okay, so I'll take any questions on the IGA. That's the first. There's 2 action items related to this.
I just think it's a great idea and great use of taxpayers' money to be cost effective.
You answered all of my questions. I'm good.
I can say the 59 is very excited about this.
I think it's a good move.
May I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Bill?
Aye.
Thank you. Dagmara?
Yes.
I vote yes. Debbie?
Yes.
Bill?
Aye.
Arlen?
Aye.
Stacy?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And the next item on the agenda is the approval of the employment agreement for the new director of school safety.
Yes, so we're very excited now that you have approved the intergovernmental agreement, that we have an extraordinary candidate that we're recommending the board take action to approve the hiring of this evening. And he's been in the audience, hanging in there with us the entire time. Thanks so much. Danny Malik, some of you may have met Danny before. Danny is currently one of the school resource officers on the Arlington Heights Police Department, and really is a leader in the coordination of and promoting of school safety. He established a task force, regional task force, and leads that task force with his fellow colleagues in law enforcement and first responder resources on this very topic. And so he has become an authority and is just really an outstanding opportunity for both of our districts. And we're just really grateful that you're looking to make this little shift in your career. Danny, did you want to say anything or introduce yourself more than I could? Just go ahead and hit the button so that it's green, so that the...
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Conley, thank you for the warm welcome to the board. Thank you for having me here and the district administration team. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited for this opportunity. Excited to bring my training, skills, and experiences as an SRO to the district. And being part of this team, I've worked extensively with the district and know that there is work to be done, but there's a strong foundation in safety and security due to the dedicated professionals that work here. I'm excited to build upon that foundation and be part of this team, and can't wait to get started. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
We're ready for a motion?
we are ready for a motion.
Be it resolved, the Board of Education approves the employment agreement for Mr. Dinka Malik as Director of School Safety and Security effective February 1, 2024.
Dagmara? Yes. I vote yes. Debbie?
Yes.
Bill?
Aye.
Arlen?
Aye.
Stacy?
Yes.
Bill?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Hey, congratulations and welcome to the district. Okay, and next on the agenda is the approval of the employment agreement with the new principal for Edgar Allan Poe Elementary School. Dr. Conley?
Yes, another really exciting milestone this evening, and I am very pleased and excited to recommend to the board Mrs. Stephanie Stallman to be the next principal of Poe Elementary School. Stephanie, come on up. Again, you know Stephanie. Stephanie has been the assistant principal at Poe for the past 3 years, and quite frankly, distinguished herself as the best candidate to take on the Poe principalship when Christy Campbell retires after 12 years. 12 years. And it was a strong pool. We had two external candidate finalists along with Stephanie, and she blew them out of the water. So we are extremely excited to recommend Stephanie, and you could say a few words if you'd like.
Well, just want to say thank you again for meeting with me earlier today and just kind of talking through some of our thoughts about Poe moving forward. But I also want to say a big thank you to our staff members who came today. It means so much to me. It truly does. And I just feel so grateful to have had the 3 years with Christy. It's going to be really big shoes to fill, and we're all going to miss her tremendously. But the culture and climate that she's established at Poe, I just am so grateful to get to carry that on. And so I truly appreciate this opportunity and look forward to working with all of you. So thank you.
But we have not approved it yet.
Well, there is
May I
that.
please get a motion to approve the employment agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I happily vote yes.
I also say yes.
Yeah, you're gonna let me call your name?
Nope.
Okay. Bill?
Aye.
Oh, my God.
Bill?
Sorry.
Aye. He's sick. Give him a break. It's okay.
Arlen?
Aye.
Stacy?
Yes.
Mr. Pritzker?
Oh, thank you very much. I wholeheartedly say yes.
Wow,
Dagmara?
you can really tell it's
All right,
not.
we're getting a little punchy here.
Uh-huh.
Motion carries.
Congratulations. Okay, and the final item under new business is the approval of the summer 2024 construction bids.
Once again, I'll keep it brief, but for the second straight summer, we will do, and this is just the first round of bids, we still have the finishing kitchens to finish off, over $15 million in construction. It brings the total in the last 5 years to over $100 million in construction between the referendum, the HVAC projects, the furniture. And in talking to our auditors today, they said that it is amazing. We spent $22.8 million in the last 2 summers just stretching the one fiscal year. And our overall fund balance has only gone down $143,000. So we have maintained a very large fund balance thanks to the stewardship of the board, adopting policies to plan for capital projects, as well as committing dollars so that we bring down our fund balances so we don't look like a for-profit company, fund the educational program, but also fund the facility. So there's a laundry list of work to be done here. This will conclude the referendum work after this summer, other than one last bit of furniture, which is the science labs. And then we can start working on bathrooms, the last 3 playgrounds, and flooring. So.
Thank you.
Well, just one comment. You thank the board. We'll thank you, Michael, because we all know how much of your hard work, dedication, commitment, and thought goes into this program, and without you, it wouldn't be happening the way it is. Thank you very much.
Please get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Up.
I don't know what to give it.
Somebody else got to speak up here, guys.
Okay, usually nobody's paying attention. Sorry.
Debbie?
Yes.
Bill?
Aye.
Arlen? Stacy?
Yes.
Phil?
Aye.
There we go.
Dagmara?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion carries.
Awesome.
And Christy, we promise that when we do the ribbon cutting at the new library at Poe, that you will have a seat right in the front.
Absolutely.
And the playground. Poe's getting a new playground.
Yeah.
And gym floor.
Is that
No more green gym floor.
I am the only one who loves.
Oh, okay.
The last item on the agenda is the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of Wheeling CCSD21 is scheduled for Thursday, February 22nd.
Madam President, can I add just a quick comment? Last night I had the honor of attending the first beginning band concert at Cooper, with all the feeder schools, and it was a spectacular program. The parents were explained how they grew, how they added music to the program step by step. It was phenomenal. And then at the end, you got to hear the actual senior band play great music. So you could see how the students evolved. And I just want to thank our staff for a tremendous evening of music last night. Thank you.
Okay,
Debbie, I'll move we adjourn.
thank you.
Second.
Okay. Debbie?
Yes.
Bill?
Aye.
I vote yes. Stacy?
Yes.
Arlen?
Aye.
Dagmara?
Yes.
Phil?
You may have adjourned.
Euler?
He's gone.
Phil, are you there?
Bill says yes.
All right, well, we got 6 of us, so motion carries.
Yes.
He's halfway to the park.